Well, ladies and gentlemen, back in 2019, Donald Trump proposed the idea of straight up buying Greenland, just like we did with the Louisiana Purchase. We acquired Florida from New Spain. We acquired Alaska from the Russian Empire. Could the next land expansion for the United States be Greenland? Would it be a smart thing? How much would Greenland cost? Trump talked about it back in 2019. Now, technically, Greenland is controlled by Denmark. I think Denmark has a GDP of like maybe 450 billion. What would the cost of Greenland be when you look at the country, the population only being 56K? Is this potentially doable to peacefully acquire Greenland and expand the United States and also be able to have access to all of those natural resources? Now, what I've been told and what I've seen is Greenland potentially has over several trillion dollars worth of natural resources. What would the cost of Greenland be? Well, nobody really knows. There's no consensus on it. If you go back to our last deal with Denmark, that was the Virgin Islands. Obviously, it was a while ago. We bought them from Denmark. And if you adjust that to inflation, that's around $500 billion. Now, I don't think Greenland would be nearly that much. Trump back in 2019, I believe, wanted Greenland for a number of reasons. Most of the mainstream media said that Trump wanted Greenland because of the rare earth minerals and all that stuff, because China right now has control of most of them. Greenland apparently has a huge supply of it. We actually don't know how many natural resources Greenland has because they're all packed under glaciers, and it is hard to get to them. It's not just the idea of buying Greenland. It's also going to cost a ton of money to extract the resources from Greenland, as it is just a giant glacier sheet with people living along the coasts on the west and the east of the country. The other reason why I think Trump would want Greenland, this is 100% a legacy move if he decides to do it. Like, what is the one thing that we all look at, possibly the most important thing outside of like the Bible in terms of people viewing it? It is the map of the world. If Trump is able to buy Greenland and make it a U.S. territory and honestly give it like 2 electoral votes incorporated into elections, the population 50K, obviously that's nothing. That would be a huge thing for Trump's legacy, and it does make sense if you can get Greenland for relatively cheap. Look at our history. And I know it's a while ago, when we purchased Alaska, we didn't purchase Hawaii, we annexed it, but when we made some of these purchases, they've all turned out great for the United States. And the idea of Greenland is the population's very small, so it's not going to be like this crazy fight like China's dealing with, with Taiwan, where they actually have to take it over because Taiwan wants to be independent. When it comes to something like Greenland, we could offer those people security. With the number one military in the world, we could give them infrastructure. They've got a high unemployment rate. We could work out programs there. It just depends. What does Denmark want for it? I think if you offered them $50 billion, again, their GDP is like 400 billion. That's like 15% of their GDP. They're not going to accept that. They don't have the technology. They don't have the means to extract the natural resources from Greenland. So Trump, in terms of his legacy, this might be an unbelievable deal if you can purchase this and really extract all, or at least some of the resources. Some of them right now we can't access. We don't have the technology to get under the glaciers, things like that. But possibly $10 to $50 billion. The question is, how would Trump pay for this? Trump had this exact same problem with the Mexican wall that we were going to put up, and I've been critical of Trump and how he handled that. It's very hard, I will say, and I know a lot of people really were underwhelmed with Trump's first term. They said he needed to do more. When you get into the White House, especially someone like Trump who's a pure outsider, and let me just say, we love the outsider aspect. That's one of the great things about Trump. He's not a career politician, but there's also issues with that. The way the United States government is set up, you need to have relationships to move things along faster. Trump did not have that, so it was very hard for him to move things along. That's why it's very important that he takes the House and the Senate in this upcoming election, and that's why you see liberals fuming over Biden. I'm not really going to talk about that right now. This is more about Greenland. But I'm just saying, liberals are so pissed because they see what's coming. Trump's going to have ultimate authority with both the House and the Senate, and he already has the Supreme Court, the big majority there. So Trump's going to have all this power. We know he needs to do stuff. He got experience his first term. His second term needs to be a lot better. If it happens, I'm not saying it's guaranteed, but right now it looks like it's going to happen. And certainly, I think any normal American, we want Trump back. Is Trump going to get us Greenland? It depends. I've been someone that has promoted the idea of being very aggressive with European countries in terms of NATO. And what I mean by that, and I've said this a lot, the United States makes up so much of the NATO budget. Personally, I think countries that are in NATO should be forced to pay the United States a tax for us just existing in NATO. That's just how powerful the United States is, and you could say it's extortion. Well, no, we've been extorted by all these countries. Half of these countries don't even agree to pay 2% in terms of GDP. If you want us to be in NATO, we're the most powerful country times 10 in the world, you need to pay us a tax, and all those European countries should be paying us a tax, and we can use that money to possibly buy Greenland and start, mining some of the stuff there. The other thing that Trump needs to do, and this has already come out now, you've got Putin and Zelensky basically admitting, if Trump gets back into the White House, we got to start negotiations for peace. Both of them had said that. And Putin came out and said in a separate statement that if Trump comes back in, he's open to peace, he's open to dialogue when it comes to the United States facilitating some type of peace agreement with Russia and Ukraine. Possibly, if you're Trump, you can go in. I think Trump's got great leverage over both Ukraine and Russia, considering Russia, they've lost so many troops. It's been such a failure of a war. Technically, they do still have land territory that they've conquered. The main two territories on the east, that's kind of what they've had since the beginning of the war. They pushed forward. They've been pushed back by NATO forces, by Ukrainian forces, but with the help of NATO missiles and technology. We know Ukraine, they're only alive right now in terms of not being taken over by Russia because of NATO. So Trump's got an amazing leverage position to where Russia's pissed off at what's going on right now. They're angry because NATO is helping Ukraine and it's costing them a lot of soldiers and a lot of weaponry. But then you've also got Ukraine, who's reliant on the NATO weapons. If those dry up, it's over. This is an amazing spot for Trump to be in. Trump can say, listen, Biden has sent $72 billion in aid to Ukraine. We're going to save that money. We're going to invest it in buying new territories and a big territorial expansion for the United States, and also getting more time zones because of where Greenland is located. We get the United States more time zones. You can fly to Greenland. You don't have to show your passport or anything. It becomes United States owned, and it becomes basically its own state if you wanted to do something like that. I think Trump wants Greenland. It's not annexing Greenland. We're purchasing it just like we did with Alaska. It would be a purchase, Louisiana purchase, things like that. And so this is a peaceful thing that the United States would want to do. Could Trump actually buy it? It would depend on the price. Right now, Denmark is saying no. Trump said he was going to buy it back in 2019. It immediately got shot down by Denmark. But Denmark, you're not utilizing it at all. There's so many untapped natural resources. You don't have the means to extract any of those natural resources from Greenland. Wouldn't it make sense for both parties, considering you're not utilizing the land at all, for us to give you, like 10 to 15% of your GDP for the country, and we can control it? And Greenland does have some issues. It would be a major investment by the United States. But I do think if you're Trump, there's things that you can slash in terms of not spending money, on certain things, also possibly extracting money out of European countries just for being in NATO. There's certain things, especially with the Russia-Ukraine situation. Unfortunately for the United States, they're probably also going to have to spend maybe even more money on Taiwan. You're going to have to protect Taiwan against China. But we are seeing this expansion by the East. You've got Russia, and really it shouldn't surprise anyone. I know everyone was shocked when Russia invaded Ukraine. That's mainly because of the nuclear weapons aspect of the whole thing. We didn't think that was ever going to happen. With nuclear bombs, the world's so unstable now. In the year 1850, countries invading each other, that's whatever. That's just ground fighting. There's no way we could blow anything up. It's just not, we didn't have the technology. Now we do. So that's why everyone was shocked. But, Russia and the Soviet Union, they were embarrassed. They lost all those Eastern countries. They've got NATO expanding. The thing that I'm surprised about when it comes to Russia, I wouldn't have necessarily invaded Ukraine right away. I would have tried to have made an anti-NATO pact. And I know they technically have agreements with some of those other countries in the East, like North Korea and China. But if I was Russia, I would say, let's literally make an anti-NATO. Let's bring in India. Let's bring in China. Let's bring in North Korea. You're not going to get South Korea, obviously. You're not going to get Japan. Let's bring in Iran. and let's make an anti-NATO to push back against this. If I was Russia, that's what I would do. And then, if you have a really good relationship with China, I would strategically time it, and I would you have Russia invading Ukraine at the exact same time China invades Taiwan. I'm surprised they didn't do it, and I'm thankful they didn't do it. But that would be the theory. Instead, they just decided to have their military operation. And so, but the thing is, we're seeing these countries start to really look to territorial expansion, like China taking over Taiwan. I think they made a big mistake. If they really want Taiwan, they should have done it in 1970, 1980. Now Taiwan is united. They've got the population of like 25 million. The United States purchasing Greenland would be completely different and so much more easier than China taking over Taiwan, mainly because of the population. The amount of people per square mile is so small in Greenland. So you can purchase it. It's very similar to Alaska. Alaska was not populated pretty much at all, and we were able to buy Alaska from Russia. The United States has tried to buy Greenland for over 100 years. I mean, there's an alternate history scenario where the United States could have Greenland right now, and Alaska could still be in Russia's control. Although I will say, with the Soviet Union falling, I think that land would probably go to, if the United States wants it, I'm sure the United States would want it. There's a lot of resources in Alaska, or it would go to Canada, actually. But I'm guessing it would go to the United States after the Soviet Union fell. But the point is, Greenland could be a major thing for Trump. All the liberal historians admit Trump's already a top 10 president ever. If he buys Greenland, I mean, he's already brought back the America First. He's totally changed everything, with zero history in terms of being a politician. And now he's won 3 straight Republican nominations. It's so historic. And he's changed the entire way we view things. Now everyone's back in. There was this rise of liberalism with Obama. Now we're back to America First. Now we've got major countries in Europe swinging right wing. Even with the recent election results, the right wing gained 20% in France. They gained significantly in the UK. And now there's new polls coming out of Canada that say, Canada's gone full right wing. And Canada's going to start waking up, and they're going to improve their military. And it's great news for the United States. And we might actually do a deal maybe with Canada to where we take over Greenland, but Canada pays some and we give them some of the natural resources from Greenland. That could also happen. So this is all on the table. And Trump really, if you're Denmark, you're kind of screwing yourself here. If Trump offers you a significant amount of money, you're not utilizing the land. Why not just accept it? We will fortify our relationship with Denmark and do some type of exclusive agreement if they want to get Greenland incorporated into the United States. And I think it would be, we could develop a nice infrastructure on the coastline. It's the weather is fine to where you can develop cities. Inland, it's all glaciers, but that's where you'd have to mine stuff. And we could definitely help their population in terms of the unemployment rate. We need people to mine things in Greenland and extract the trillions of dollars in natural resources. This is a deal that over time will pay off significantly for the United States, I would figure, unless Denmark says we want $1 trillion, which would be ridiculous. That's double their GDP. We're not giving you $1 trillion. We have to extract all of the natural resources. That's going to cost billions of dollars in and of itself to do that. So it would be a lot less than that. Hypothetically, if you want to argue the Virgin Islands costing $500 million adjusted for inflation, it could be a bit of an issue. But I do think this territorial expansion is right up Trump's alley. He wants to have a huge legacy, and Trump's major second-term things, you've got to deal with Taiwan and China. You've got to completely change the U.S. government and stop having it stacked against conservatives. That's like Project 2025. It's all the federal jobs need to be changed. They're all liberal right now. Republicans are wising up to it. And they fearmonger and they moan. It's like Washington, D.C. is 97%, 98% liberal. That's where all of our federal politics are. I don't think that's very good. And then you've also got possibly Trump buying Greenland. If Trump can number one, stop the Russian-Ukraine war, hopefully within the first few months of his administration. We don't know. It's who knows, But if he can do that, and then he can calm the China-Taiwan situation, which is going to be extremely hard, especially if they do a blockade. I'm hoping that China doesn't do anything, but I think it's too far gone. They're already gray zoning Taiwan. So it's like, what do you do with that situation? You already have Israel-Palestine talking about peace. Maybe Trump can get it over the finish line, and obviously it would have to be a two-party state there. And then you also have Trump possibly expanding the United States allowing us to buy Greenland, and in the long run, it paying off significantly. And also what's going on with NATO, it's so disgusting. It's all come out now. The European Union is trying to censor acts and offering Elon Musk money to censor certain things, in all likelihood, conservative viewpoints. So the European Union has gone totally off the rails. I'm sick of dealing with NATO. I understand it's a peace treaty pact, but I mean, it has it forced Russia. Well, it didn't force them, but part of the reason Russia invaded Ukraine is because of it. I mean, it would be like Mexico. Like, imagine what I was saying earlier with this anti-NATO pact where you've got all these major players in the East like China, Russia, and India involved in it. And then Mexico says that they want to join the pact as well. Would we really like that? Or Canada says it. You know, it's a bordering country. It's like Ukraine wants to join NATO. Well, that's a bordering country to Russia. And I'm not trying to minimize what Putin did. I'm saying this is the reality of it. Americans have been fed propaganda. And look, again, it's not good what Putin did. I agree. I'm not this Putin stan. I'm just saying, like this is crazy stuff. Like, imagine if there was this major anti-American agreement and you had Mexico trying to join it. Would it not be a huge issue? So that's like Ukraine trying to join NATO and just encroaching further and further east. To the point where in 2004, all those countries, you know, in Eastern Europe that were previously controlled by the Soviet Union joined NATO, and it's a big issue. So the point here is, can Trump buy Greenland? It depends on what Denmark would want. What's the cost? I mean, the reason you could do this is because the population is so small, and also the relationship Greenland has to where technically it's controlled by Denmark, but it's weird. It's like, you know, it's its own land, but it's controlled. So I think this would be a good purchase by the United States. I think we could save money elsewhere and expand the United States through a territorial expansion, peaceful land acquisition of Greenland for around $10 to $50 billion. That's what I would expect right now. And then we'd have to spend a lot of money on the infrastructure in Greenland. There's no doubt about it. But we do have these situations and all these liberal programs that are a waste. They cost billions and billions of dollars. Nobody bats an eye. Let's cut all those off. I think if Trump really wants to go down as one of the great presidents, he needs to be very transparent with the American people on where we're spending our money. We need to have an actual legitimate audit to where you can, like, they create a website, like literally create a website or do something so we know where our tax dollars are going. That would be full, at least better transparency than what we currently have. They try and do audits, but people don't really believe those. You need to like actually go to a website and be able to see. I think that would be better in terms of being transparent what the government is actually spending money on, because we just have such an enormous war chest right now. And I don't think, you know, we're obviously not going to be cutting our military budget. And that's not just a Republican thing, by the way. Obama expanded the military budget. It's not like Biden is saying he's cutting the military budget. This is the culture of the United States. We're obsessed with having a massive military. Okay, the only people that don't want a massive military are, and you could argue, well, it's an overkill that we have, you know, the crazy amount of money we have into it. And honestly, I would agree with that. But this is just our culture. The only people that don't really want it, you know, they're young far leftists. Everyone else, even Democrats, they admit they want a really big military. It's just the reality. So, and the thing is, now we have to utilize our military to our advantage and start bullying these countries, not literally, but figuratively bullying them like the NATO countries. We have all the leverage over these countries in terms of military budget. 70% of NATO is the United States. Let's utilize that and really get money from these European countries. That's what I would say. And maybe it could help us with pay for Greenland. So will Trump buy Greenland? He said that if there's dialogue, it might happen in his second term. He tried it in 2019. He was shot down. I did not see an official price that Denmark wanted for Greenland. But again, I would imagine somewhere maybe around $50 billion. I know people were saying $1 trillion. There's no way the United States would be interested in purchasing Greenland, I don't think, for $1 trillion. You know, I don't know how many natural resources it has, but it just would not be worth it. But for $10 to $50 billion, Greenland would be a good thing for the United States to buy. Remember, it came out that China was trying to pucker, you know, Greenland up, or it was Denmark. They wanted to have bases. They wanted to take over an abandoned military base on Greenland, and Denmark didn't let them do that. what China does, and they did this to Africa, and a lot of people fell for it, but they'll go to these countries that have a lot of resources that maybe are like they have a lack of means, or they're not first world, and they'll say, we want to help you. The first thing is they say, we want to help you. We want to set up jobs and things like this, and then in return, we're going to get resources back. That's what they did with Africa. That's why everyone talks about China being in Africa, and they tried doing it with Greenland, and Denmark did not let them. They wanted a military base in Greenland that was abandoned, and Denmark said no. So Denmark seems to be pretty steadfast, but it's important because China right now, the thing that Greenland has is they're called rare earths. And it's just, things within the earth, obviously, whether it's minerals or what have you, they're very rare. China controls most of them right now. And the speculation was that Trump wanted Greenland to have access to those rare earths. And that was one of the big reasons. And I think that's true, but I also think Trump wants it for his legacy. Anytime you look at a map, if the United States has Greenland, we will know Trump got us Greenland, and it's huge. And could we have a territorial expansion in the United States? I don't think it's happened since maybe 1945, 1946, acquiring islands. I know the United States got a lot of islands, Baker Island, the Virgin Islands, Midway Island. We really don't annex anything outside of Hawaii back in, over 100 years ago. But the point is, this will be interesting to see if Trump does this. It could be huge for his legacy. I think he wants it, but it just depends. Does Denmark want to sell it? Could the United States give Denmark such a good offer where they'd be forced to accept it? I mean, considering what they're worth, and they're really not using Greenland right now, and other countries are going to try and poach Greenland. We've already seen China, try and do some certain things. It would make sense for the United States, based on the unique situation surrounding Greenland, the fact that it's so massive, but it has such a small population, it'll enable you to potentially outright buy the country. And the people on Greenland, the idea would be to make them want to join the United States by offering benefits and offering them protection, the world's #1 military, and they would want to be incorporated into the United States and leave, Denmark, which is technically currently who rules them. So this is all very interesting, but either way, guys, that is going to do it for this video. Make sure you follow me on X. Link to that's always in the description.